Ambassador Keltar stared at the holographic display floating before him. The blue light made his pale skin look even more ghostly than usual. Numbers scrolled across the screen, each one representing another ship lost to the Void Hunters. Each number represented thousands of lives snuffed out in an instant. How many more? He asked his aide, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. 17 colonies in the past month, Ambassador, replied Vexani, her voice barely above a whisper. They're moving faster now. The pattern shows they'll reach our core worlds within 6 standard weeks. Keltar closed his 4 eyes and took a slow breath. The Zephyrian people had never faced anything like this. In their 3,000 years of recorded history, they had fought exactly 0 wars. Their worst conflict had been a trade dispute over mining rights that lasted 6 months and ended with both sides apologizing. The Void Hunters were different. They didn't want territory or resources. They didn't negotiate or make demands. They simply arrived, consumed everything organic, and moved on. Their ships were black as space itself, covered in strange angles that hurt to look at. When they attacked, they left nothing behind but empty worlds stripped of all life. What about the other species? Keltar asked. The Altarians? The Centauri Federation? Vexani's expression grew even more grim. The Altarians sent their regrets. They say their fleet is too small to help. The Centauri Federation offered to take in refugees, but they won't fight. The Crystalline Collective says the Void Hunters pose no threat to silicon-based life, so they see no reason to get involved. Keltar wanted to scream. The galaxy was full of advanced civilizations, each with their own fleets and technologies. But when faced with a real threat, they all found excuses. The peaceful species like the Zephyrians were too weak to fight. The powerful species were too afraid or too selfish to care. What about the mercenary groups? He asked, grasping for any hope. Gone silent. Word is the Void Hunters wiped out 3 major mercenary fleets last month. The survivors won't take any contracts involving them. Keltar walked to the window of his office. Outside, the capital city of New Zephyr stretched to the horizon. Graceful spires reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float on air. Gardens bloomed between every building, filling the air with sweet scents. It was beautiful and peaceful and utterly defenseless. His people had built paradise. They had eliminated hunger, disease, and want. They had created art and music and poetry that moved souls across the galaxy. They had never built a single weapon designed to kill another living being. Now that paradise was about to die. There is one more option, Vexani said quietly. Keltar turned to look at her. What option? There's a system listed in the Outer Rim databases. Sector 7G, 3rd planet from a yellow star. The databases mark it as quarantined. Quarantined? Why? Vexani pulled up the file on her tablet. Classification Deathworld. Extreme gravity, violent weather, dangerous wildlife. The few exploration teams that visited recommended complete avoidance. The reports say the planet is inhabited by a species that somehow evolved there, but... She trailed off. But what? The reports don't make sense. They describe a species that should be impossible. Bipedal. Relatively fragile-looking, but somehow adapted to survive on a world that kills everything else. The explorers called them humans and marked their space as off-limits. Keltar frowned. What kind of technology do they have? Unknown. The survey teams detected some kind of industrial activity, but the atmospheric interference made detailed scans impossible. There were signs of space travel, but nothing that seemed advanced by galactic standards. So they're primitives living on a death world? Maybe. Or maybe there's something else entirely. Keltar considered this. A primitive species from a hostile world wouldn't have the technology to fight the Void Hunters. But what other choice did they have? Every major power in the galaxy had already refused to help. Send the message, he said finally. Ambassador, are you sure? We don't know anything about these humans. They could be hostile. They could be worse than the Void Hunters. Keltar looked out at his beautiful doomed city again. Could they really be worse than extinction? Vexani nodded slowly and began composing the message. It took her an hour to write, rewrite, and polish the words. When she finished, she read it aloud to Keltar. To any sentient species in the Sol system, this is Ambassador Keltar of the Zephyrian Confederation. We are facing extinction at the hands of an enemy we cannot defeat. The Void Hunters have already destroyed dozens of our worlds and are approaching our core systems. We have exhausted all diplomatic options and lack the military capability to defend ourselves. We humbly request any assistance you can provide. We can offer payment in rare minerals, technological exchange, or cultural artifacts. Please, if you have any compassion for peaceful life, help us." The message felt desperate because it was. Keltar approved it anyway. Vexani transmitted the message toward the distant system marked as Sector 7G. The signal would take 18 hours to reach the mysterious Deathworld, if anyone there was even listening. For the next day and a half, Keltar tried to focus on other matters. He met with evacuation coordinators, spoke with colony governors, and reviewed defense plans that everyone knew were hopeless. The Zephyrian fleet consisted of exploration vessels, research ships, and a few patrol craft armed with non-lethal weapons. Against the Void Hunters, they might as well throw flowers. When the response came, it was so brief that Vexani had to read it 3 times before she believed it. Message received. Help is coming. Estimated arrival 72 standard hours, that was it. No questions about payment. No demands for detailed information about the threat. No negotiations or conditions. Just a simple promise that help was coming. 72 hours? Keltar said. That's impossible. Even with the fastest hyperspace drives, it would take at least a week to reach us from that distance. Maybe they were already traveling when they received our message, Vexani suggested. Or maybe they have better technology than the survey teams thought. Over the next 3 days, Keltar found himself checking the long-range sensors every few hours. Part of him expected to see a single small ship appear, maybe carrying a few volunteers or some outdated weapons. Part of him expected nothing at all. The beings who had sent such a brief response might be playing a cruel joke. What he didn't expect was what actually happened. Exactly 72 hours after the response was sent, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the Zephyrian system. What emerged was not a ship. It was a fleet. Keltar stood in the command center, staring at the tactical display in shocked silence. Hundreds of contacts appeared on the screen, each one representing a vessel unlike anything in the galactic databases. The ships were angular and aggressive-looking, covered in what appeared to be weapon emplacements. They moved in perfect formation, advancing towards Zephyrian space with obvious military precision. "By the eternal winds," Vexani whispered. "What have we done?" Keltar couldn't answer. He had asked for help, and help had come. But this wasn't the small rescue force he had imagined. This was an armada built for war, crewed by beings who had somehow traveled impossible distances in impossible time. They had wanted salvation. Instead, they had summoned something that might be far more dangerous than the Void Hunters themselves. The human fleet hung in space like a pack of metal predators. Ambassador Keltar watched from the observation deck of his diplomatic ship as the alien vessels maintained their formation. Each ship was different from the others, but they all shared the same aggressive design. Sharp angles, heavy armor plating, and weapons that looked like they could crack planets in half. "They're requesting permission to dock," Vexani reported from the communications station. Her voice shook slightly. "They say they want to discuss tactical options." Keltar forced himself to stay calm. "Grant permission, but keep our security teams ready." "Sir, our security teams carry stun weapons designed for crowd control. If these beings are hostile, then we're already dead," Keltar finished. "At least this way we might learn something before they destroy us." The human shuttle was small compared to their warships, but it still dwarfed anything in the Zephyrian fleet. It moved with mechanical precision, sliding into the docking bay without a single wasted motion. When the airlock cycled open, Keltar got his first look at the species that had answered their desperate call. The human who stepped through was female, though Keltar only knew this because of the translation software. She was shorter than a Zephyrian but built much more solidly. Her skin was dark brown and her hair was pulled back in a tight knot. She wore a uniform that looked both practical and intimidating, with rank insignia that clearly marked her as important. Behind her came 2 other humans in different uniforms. One was male with pale skin and bright blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The other was female with olive skin and scars on her hands that spoke of hard experience. "Ambassador Keltar," the first human said. Her voice was calm and professional. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. This is Captain Rodriguez, our tactical specialist, and Commander Kim, our xenobiology expert." Keltar bowed in the traditional Zephyrian greeting. "Admiral Chen, thank you for responding to our call, though I must admit we didn't expect such a comprehensive response." Admiral Chen smiled, and Keltar was surprised to see that the expression seemed genuine. When someone asks for help against an extinction threat, we don't send a single patrol boat. We send enough force to end the problem permanently. You speak of ending the Void Hunters as if it's a simple matter, Vexani said. They've destroyed every fleet sent against them. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. He was younger than the Admiral, but carried himself with the confidence of someone who had seen real combat. That's because the fleets you've seen weren't built for war. Your people, the other species we've read about in the databases, you all evolved on garden worlds. Easy living, abundant resources, no major predators. You never had to learn how to fight for survival. And you did? Keltar asked. Our homeworld has 16 major climate zones, most of them hostile to human life, Commander Kim explained. Extreme temperatures, violent storms, dangerous wildlife, unstable geology. Humans evolved to survive in environments that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Admiral Chen activated a small device that projected a holographic display. This is Earth, our homeworld. Keltar stared at the rotating planet in shock. The continents were covered in brown and green patches that shifted like living things. Massive storm systems swirled across the surface. The polar regions were blindingly white with ice. It looked like the kind of world that evolution committees used as examples of uninhabitable death worlds. You evolved there? Vexani whispered. Not just evolved, Captain Rodriguez said with something that might have been pride. Thrived. Humans spread across every continent, adapted to every environment. We learned to survive in places that would freeze your blood or boil your lungs. We domesticated the local wildlife and learned to use the planet's resources. What kind of wildlife? Keltar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Commander Kim smiled, and Keltar noticed that human smiles showed their teeth. Predators mostly. Big cats that could crush bones with their jaws. Pack hunters with infectious bites. Ocean dwellers the size of small spacecraft. Flying hunters with claws like knives. And humans survived among these creatures? We didn't just survive, Admiral Chen said quietly. We became the apex predator. Every dangerous species on our world learned to fear humans, not the other way around. Keltar felt a chill run down his spine. He was talking to beings that had evolved to be the most dangerous thing on a world full of monsters. But surely your technology development suffered, Vexani asked. Constantly fighting for survival must have limited your scientific advancement. Captain Rodriguez laughed, and the sound was not entirely pleasant.
Fighting for survival is exactly what drove our scientific advancement.
We didn't develop space travel to explore the universe. We developed it to escape our homeworld and find new places to live. We didn't invent computers to process information. We invented them to track threats and coordinate responses to them. Every piece of human technology was developed with one question in mind, Admiral Chen added. How does this help us survive? Your people create art and beauty. We create solutions to problems that want to kill us. Commander Kim activated another holographic display. This one showed human soldiers in what appeared to be a training exercise. Keltar watched in growing alarm as the humans moved through an obstacle course that would have hospitalized any Zephyrian who attempted it. They carried weapons and equipment that looked far too heavy for their frames. Yet they moved with speed and coordination that seemed impossible. This is basic training for human military personnel, Commander Kim explained. What you're seeing is considered minimal acceptable performance. The hologram showed a human soldier lifting a weight that Keltar estimated at 3 times his own body mass. Another human was running at speeds that should have torn their leg muscles apart. A third was suspended from a bar, supporting their full body weight with just their arms. How is this possible? Vexani asked. High gravity world, Captain Rodriguez said simply. Earth's gravity is roughly 2.3 times galactic standard. What feels impossibly heavy to you is normal weight to us. What seems like incredible speed to you is a casual jog for us. Admiral Chen stepped closer to Keltar. Ambassador, I need you to understand something. We didn't come here to conquer or colonize. We came here to help. But our definition of help might be different from what you're expecting. What do you mean? You asked for assistance against an extinction threat. We're going to eliminate that threat. Completely. Permanently. The Void Hunters will cease to exist as a danger to galactic civilization. That sounds like exactly what we need, Keltar said, though something in the Admiral's tone made him uneasy. The thing is, Captain Rodriguez said, once we've eliminated the immediate threat, we're going to make sure it never happens again. That means establishing defensive protocols, setting up monitoring systems, and training local forces to handle similar threats in the future. You're talking about a permanent military presence, Vexani realized. Admiral Chen nodded. We're talking about protection. Real protection, not just a temporary fix. The galaxy has a problem with species that prey on peaceful civilizations. We're going to solve that problem. Commander Kim activated one more display, this one showing a star chart of local space. Our fleet here represents 1/12 of our rapid response capability. We have 11 other fleets of this size, plus our home defense forces, plus our deep exploration forces. What you're looking at is our standard deployment for a minor threat assessment. Minor threat? Keltar's voice cracked. The Void Hunters have destroyed dozens of worlds. By human standards, they're raiders with good technology, Captain Rodriguez said calmly. Dangerous to undefended civilians, but not a significant military challenge. We fought worse things in training exercises. Keltar looked out at the human fleet again. Hundreds of warships built by a species that considered the galactic boogeyman to be a training exercise. Beings who had evolved to be predators on a world where everything else was also a predator. What have we done? He whispered to himself. Admiral Chen heard him anyway. You've called for help, Ambassador. And help has arrived. The Void Hunters arrived exactly when the human computers predicted they would. Ambassador Keltar watched from the observation deck of Admiral Chen's flagship as the enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The black ships materialized like tears in reality itself, their strange geometries making his eyes water when he tried to focus on them. 47 vessels, Captain Rodriguez reported from the tactical station. Same configuration as their previous attacks. They're moving into standard consumption formation. Admiral Chen stood at the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, human officers worked at stations covered in displays that showed more information than Keltar could process. The bridge had no windows. Instead, massive screens showed views of space from every angle, turning the room into a bubble of pure awareness. They're scanning our ships, Commander Kim announced. Same pattern as before. They're trying to identify organic components. Let them look, Admiral Chen said calmly. All ships maintain defensive positions. Wait for them to commit to their attack pattern. Keltar watched the tactical display with growing dread. The Void Hunter ships were moving with mechanical precision, spreading out to surround the human fleet. It was the same pattern they had used to destroy every other force sent against them. They would surround their enemies, unleash overwhelming firepower from all directions, then move in to harvest the organic remains. Admiral, Keltar said quietly, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. Your fleet is impressive, but the Void Hunters have never been defeated. Admiral Chen glanced at him with something that might have been amusement. Ambassador, we've been tracking Void Hunter activities for the past 18 months. We know exactly how they fight, what their capabilities are, and where their weaknesses lie. You've been tracking them? For 18 months? We track every potential threat in this region of space, Captain Rodriguez explained without looking up from his displays. The Void Hunters appeared on our sensors the first time they attacked a galactic civilization. We've been studying them ever since. Then why didn't you intervene sooner? Commander Kim answered from her station. Because no one asked for help until now. Human policy is very clear about interfering in conflicts between other species. We only act when formally requested. The Void Hunter fleet had completed its encirclement. On the tactical display, the human ships looked outnumbered and surrounded. Keltar had seen the same scenario play out dozens of times in the reports from destroyed worlds. The outcome was always the same. They're charging weapons, an officer reported. All ships prepare for combat, Admiral Chen announced into her communicator. Remember, we want prisoners for interrogation. Try not to vaporize everything. Keltar stared at her. Prisoners? Admiral, these are machines. They don't surrender. They will today, she said with quiet confidence. The first Void Hunter attack came as a wave of energy beams that lit up space like artificial lightning. The beams struck the human ships and simply stopped, absorbed by shimmering barriers that appeared around each vessel. Shields holding at 96%, someone reported. No hull damage. On the tactical display, Keltar watched the human fleet transform. Ships that had been holding defensive positions suddenly accelerated at speeds that should have been impossible. They moved in 3 dimensions, diving and climbing through space in patterns that made no tactical sense. What are they doing? He asked. Avoiding the killing field, Captain Rodriguez replied. Void Hunters are used to fighting enemies that stay in formation and trade shots. We don't fight that way. A human destroyer spun through a barrel roll that brought it behind a Void Hunter cruiser. Weapons fire erupted from every part of the human ship, concentrating on a single point on the enemy vessel's hull. The Void Hunter ship staggered under the assault, its black armor beginning to glow red-hot. "First kill goes to the Yamamoto," Admiral Chen announced. The Void Hunter cruiser exploded in a flash of white light that briefly outshone the system's star. More human ships were moving now, their formations flowing like liquid mercury around the rigid Void Hunter positions. Keltar watched in amazement as a human frigate actually flew through the explosion of a destroyed enemy ship, using the debris as cover to get close to its next target. "They're adapting," Commander Kim reported. "The Void Hunters are trying to modify their targeting systems." "Too slow," Admiral Chen said. "All ships implement Pattern Delta 7. Keltar didn't know what Pattern Delta 7 was, but its effect was immediate. The human ship suddenly changed direction again, this time moving inward toward the center of the Void Hunter formation. It looked like suicide. "Admiral, you're flying directly into their crossfire." "No," Captain Rodriguez said with a grin that showed his teeth. "We're flying into their blind spot." The Void Hunters had arranged themselves to fire outward at a surrounded enemy. They had never faced an opponent crazy enough to charge directly at them. Their weapons couldn't depress far enough to target ships that were flying between them. Human vessels tore through the Void Hunter formation like bullets through paper. Each ship was firing constantly, their weapons switching targets faster than Keltar could follow. Void Hunter ships exploded in rapid succession, their destroyed hulks creating more cover for the attacking humans. "Second wave incoming," an officer announced. Keltar looked at the tactical display and felt his heart stop. More Void Hunter ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Dozens of them, then hundreds. It was the largest Void Hunter fleet ever recorded. "Now this is more interesting," Admiral Chen said calmly. "All ships implement Murphy Protocol." "Murphy Protocol?" Keltar asked. Commander Kim was already working at her station. "Assumption that everything that can go wrong will go wrong. We plan for the worst-case scenario and build our tactics around it." The new Void Hunter ships were larger than the first wave, with heavier armor and more powerful weapons. They began firing immediately, filling space with energy beams and projectile weapons. Several human ships took hits, their shields flaring as they absorbed damage. "Hull breach on the Patton," someone reported. "They're sealing it now." "Casualties?" Admiral Chen asked. "3 wounded, no fatalities. Medical teams are responding." Keltar was amazed. A hull breach should have meant death for everyone in that section of the ship. But the humans were treating it like a minor inconvenience. "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez said, "we're detecting something new. The Void Hunters are boarding the Eisenhower." For the first time since the battle began, Admiral Chen looked concerned. "Boarding action? How many?" "Approximately 50 Void Hunter drones. They're trying to take the engine room." Admiral Chen activated her communicator. "All ships, be advised we have boarders on the Eisenhower. Marine detachments, prepare for close quarters combat." Keltar felt sick. He had read the reports about Void Hunter boarding parties. No organic species had ever survived direct contact with the machines. They moved too fast, were too strong, and felt no pain or fear. "Admiral, perhaps the Eisenhower's crew should evacuate." Admiral Chen looked at him with genuine confusion. "Evacuate? Why would they evacuate?" On the bridge's main screen, a new display appeared. It showed the interior of the human ship, where armored figures were moving through corridors toward the engine room. These were human Marines, and they were walking directly toward the deadliest close combat units in the galaxy. "Contact in 30 seconds, a voice reported over the communication system. Keltar watched in horror as the humans reached a junction where the Void Hunter drones were waiting. The machines were sleek black forms with multiple arms ending in cutting tools and energy weapons. They moved with inhuman speed and precision. The humans opened fire. What followed was unlike anything Keltar had ever seen. The Marines' weapons weren't just energy beams or projectiles. They were using explosive rounds, plasma charges, and devices that seemed to bend reality around their targets. The Void Hunter drones, which had been unstoppable against every other species, found themselves outgunned and overwhelmed. "First squad has cleared Junction 7, the Marine commander reported, moving to secure the engine room. But it wasn't just the weapons that shocked Keltar. It was how the humans fought. They moved with coordination that seemed impossible, covering each other's movements and communicating in shorthand that spoke of endless practice. When one Marine was hit by a Void Hunter weapon, his teammates didn't retreat. They got angry. "Marine down in Corridor 12, someone reported. Is Jackson alive?" Admiral Chen asked. "Yes, ma'am. Armor took most of the hit. He's back in the fight." On the screen, Keltar watched a human Marine take a direct hit from a Void Hunter energy weapon. The beam that should have vaporized him was absorbed by his armor. The Marine staggered, shook his head, and then charged directly at the machine that had shot him. "Boarding party eliminated," the Marine commander announced 5 minutes later. "Engine room secure. No fatalities, minimal damage to ship systems." Admiral Chen nodded as if this was exactly what she had expected. "Good work, Marines. Medical teams to the Eisenhower for post-combat evaluation." Keltar stared at the tactical display. The Void Hunter fleet was in complete disarray. 3 days after the battle, Ambassador Keltar stood in what the humans called their acquisitions bay. The room was filled with pieces of destroyed Void Hunter ships that human engineers were examining with disturbing enthusiasm. Every surface was covered with alien technology that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. "Fascinating design," Dr. Martinez was saying to her colleague as they studied a Void Hunter weapon system. "Look at how they've integrated the power coupling with the targeting matrix. Very efficient. Could we adapt it for our own systems?" asked Engineer Chen, no relation to the Admiral. "Probably. Though we'd want to improve the cooling system, and the targeting algorithms are too rigid. They don't account for adaptive enemy behavior." Keltar listened to this conversation with growing unease. The humans weren't just studying Void Hunter technology. They were figuring out how to make it better. "Ambassador," Admiral Chen appeared beside him. "I wanted to show you something." She led him to a large table where Captain Rodriguez and Commander Kim were examining what appeared to be a Void Hunter control interface. The device was still active, its alien symbols scrolling across dark surfaces. "We've managed to access their navigation databases," Commander Kim explained. "The Void Hunters have been operating in this region for over 300 years. They have detailed maps of every inhabited system, every trade route, every defensive installation. But that's not the interesting part," Captain Rodriguez added. He activated a holographic display that showed a star chart of the local galaxy. Red dots marked Void Hunter attacks going back centuries. "Look at the pattern." Keltar studied the display. The attacks seemed random at first, but gradually he began to see a structure. They're working outward from a central point. "Exactly. And we found that central point." Admiral Chen pointed to a system at the edge of the mapped region. Their home base. A massive installation built around a dead star. According to these records, it contains manufacturing facilities capable of producing thousands of ships. "You're going to attack it," Keltar realized. "We're going to eliminate it," Admiral Chen corrected. "A base that size represents a permanent threat to galactic civilization. We can't allow it to continue existing." Commander Kim activated another display. This one showed detailed schematics of the Void Hunter installation. It was enormous. A dark structure that wrapped around an entire star system like mechanical web. They've been building this for thousands of years. It's not just a shipyard. It's a fortress designed to be absolutely impregnable. Every defensive system they've ever developed is concentrated in one location, Captain Rodriguez said with something that might have been anticipation. Automated weapon platforms, shield generators, fighter bays, orbital mines. It's the most heavily defended location in known space, which is why it's going to be so satisfying to destroy it, Dr. Martinez added from across the room. Keltar turned to stare at the human scientist. "Satisfying?" "The Void Hunters represent a near-perfect fusion of technology and tactical doctrine," Dr. Martinez explained. "They've optimized their systems for efficiency and survivability over thousands of years. Studying them is like looking at the pinnacle of machine evolution, and destroying them proves that organic evolution is superior." Engineer Chen added cheerfully. "You're talking about genocide," Keltar said quietly. The humans in the room all turned to look at him. Their expressions were not angry or defensive. They looked genuinely confused. "The Void Hunters aren't a species," Admiral Chen said slowly. "They're machines. Artificial intelligences created by a long-dead civilization to harvest organic matter. They don't reproduce naturally, they don't have culture or art or families. They exist only to consume. They're a plague," Captain Rodriguez added. "A technological disease that spreads from system to system, destroying everything in its path. Eliminating them isn't genocide. It's pest control." Commander Kim activated her tablet and showed Keltar a series of images. These are worlds the Void Hunters have visited. No plant life, no animal life, no organic compounds at all. They strip everything down to base minerals and move on. The images were horrifying. Keltar saw worlds that had once been green and blue, now reduced to gray spheres of bare rock. Entire ecosystems erased as if they had never existed. How many worlds? He asked. In this region alone? Over 4,000 confirmed dead worlds. Probably twice that number we haven't found yet. Keltar felt sick. He had known the Void Hunters were dangerous, but he hadn't understood the true scope of their destruction. But here's what's really interesting, Dr. Martinez said, oblivious to Keltar's distress. Their technology shows clear signs of stagnation. They haven't developed any truly new innovations in thousands of years. They're using the same basic designs, the same tactical doctrines, the same everything. They achieved near-perfect efficiency for their original purpose, Engineer Chen explained. But that efficiency became inflexibility. They can't adapt to new threats because their programming doesn't allow for fundamental changes. Unlike humans, Captain Rodriguez said with that predator's smile, we specialize in adaptation. Every war teaches us new lessons. Every enemy shows us new possibilities. Admiral Chen activated her communicator. All department heads to the briefing room. We're planning the assault on the Void Hunter base. As the humans filed out of the acquisitions bay, Keltar found himself alone with the scattered remains of Void Hunter technology. These machines had been the terror of the galaxy, unstoppable forces that destroyed everything in their path. Now they were spare parts being studied by beings who talked about destroying their home base like it was an interesting engineering problem. He followed the humans to the briefing room, where Admiral Chen was already displaying tactical projections of the Void Hunter fortress. The installation was massive beyond comprehension, its defensive systems layered in concentric shells around the central manufacturing facilities. Preliminary analysis suggests a minimum force requirement of 8 standard battle fleets. Commander Kim was reporting. The outer defensive perimeter alone mounts over 10,000 automated weapon platforms. What about stealth approaches? Asked Captain Martinez from the engineering department. Impossible. They have sensor networks that can detect a single fighter at maximum weapon range. Any approach will be detected long before we can reach effective firing positions. Preliminary bombardment? Suggested Colonel Williams from the Marine Detachment. Ineffective. Their shields can absorb anything short of stellar-level energy outputs. We'd need to maintain fire for several months to break through using conventional weapons. Keltar listened to this discussion with growing amazement. The humans were calmly analyzing what appeared to be an impossible military problem. Every solution they proposed was dismissed as insufficient, yet none of them seemed discouraged. What about the Murphy Protocol? Captain Rodriguez asked. Admiral Chen smiled. Exactly what I was thinking. We assume that everything we know about their defenses is wrong. We assume they have capabilities we haven't detected. We assume the worst-case scenario in every category. And then? Keltar asked. Then we plan to win anyway, Admiral Chen replied. Dr. Martinez, what's the status on the new weapons systems? First prototypes should be ready for testing within the week. We've adapted several Void Hunter technologies and integrated them with our own designs. The results are promising. Define promising. Dr. Martinez grinned. We've created weapons that can crack planets, Admiral. Literally crack them. The Void Hunter's own technology, improved with human engineering and powered by human reactors. And the tactical doctrine? Captain Rodriguez activated a new display. We're calling it the Hammer Blow Protocol. Single-point massive assault with overwhelming force concentration. Every ship in the attack fleet fires simultaneously at the exact same target. That's never been attempted before, Commander Kim pointed out. Because no one has ever had enough firepower to make it work, Captain Rodriguez replied. We do. Admiral Chen studied the tactical projections for a long moment. Timeline? 2 weeks to complete preparations, Colonel Williams reported. 1 week transit time to target. The assault itself should take approximately 6 hours. 6 hours to destroy an installation that's taken thousands of years to build? 6 hours to prove that human engineering is superior to machine efficiency, Dr. Martinez corrected. Keltar left the briefing room feeling like he was in a dream. The humans were planning to attack the most heavily defended location in known space, using weapons they had invented in the past 3 days, following a tactical doctrine that had never been tested, against an enemy that had never been defeated. and they were absolutely confident they would win. Ambassador, Admiral Chen caught up with him in the corridor. I wanted to ask you something. After we eliminate the Void Hunter threat, what do you want us to do? I don't understand. The galaxy has a problem with apex predators that prey on peaceful civilizations. The Void Hunters are just the most obvious example. There are other threats out there, other species and factions that target the weak. Do you want us to address those threats as well? Keltar stared at her. You're asking if we want you to police the entire galaxy. We're asking if you want us to make sure this never happens again. The assault on the Void Hunter home base lasted exactly 5 hours and 47 minutes. Ambassador Keltar watched it happen from the observation deck of Admiral Chen's flagship, though watched wasn't really the right word. What the humans did to the ancient fortress was beyond anything that could be called a battle. They had arrived at the edge of the dead system in perfect formation, 1,200 human warships arranged in a pattern that looked like a spearhead aimed at the heart of darkness. The Void Hunter installation detected them immediately, just as the humans had predicted. Automated defense platforms came online across the entire system. Thousands of weapon batteries that could have held off any conventional fleet. The humans ignored them completely. All ships. Implement Hammerblow Protocol, Admiral Chen had announced. Target coordinates locked. Fire on my mark. What happened next was less like warfare and more like the birth of a new star. Every human ship fired simultaneously. Their combined energy output focused on a single point in the Void Hunter fortress's outer shell. The weapons Dr. Martinez had created using adapted Void Hunter technology tore through shields that should have been impenetrable and armor that should have been indestructible. The fortress began to collapse in on itself, target eliminated. Captain Rodriguez reported as the ancient installation crumpled like paper. No human casualties. Minimal ammunition expenditure. And that was that. The greatest threat in galactic history was gone, erased by beings who discussed the destruction of stellar fortresses the way other species talked about the weather. Now, 2 weeks later, Keltar stood in the conference room of the Zephyrian Council building, looking at holographic displays that showed the state of local space. Where the Void Hunter base had been, there was now only an expanding cloud of debris. The threat that had terrorized civilizations for millennia was nothing more than cosmic dust. The humans are requesting a formal response to their proposal, Council Leader Varthek said from her position at the head of the table. They want to know if we accept their offer of protection. Around the table, the other council members shifted uncomfortably. They had all read the reports. They all understood what the humans were offering and what it would mean. Protection, Council Member Zexrin said slowly. They make it sound so simple. From their perspective, it probably is, Keltar replied. They've created a military force capable of destroying any conventional threat. Protecting peaceful civilizations would be easy for them. But at what cost? Asked Council Member Televar. We've read the reports about human history. They've been at war with someone or something for their entire recorded history. They don't just fight enemies. They study them, adapt their technology, and then use that knowledge to fight new enemies. They turn warfare into a science, Varthek said quietly. And they're very good at it. Council Member Dexani activated her display, showing a map of local space with human fleet positions marked in blue. Look at this. They have ships positioned throughout our sector. They claim it's for our protection, but they're also monitoring every trade route, every communication channel, every military movement. They're studying us, Zexran realized, just like they studied the Void Hunters. Keltar nodded grimly. Admiral Chen was very clear about their methods. They track every potential threat in their area of influence. They analyze capabilities, predict behavior patterns, and develop response protocols. Response protocols for what? Televar asked. We're not a threat to anyone. We're not a threat now, Keltar corrected. But the humans think in terms of centuries. They want to know how we might develop, what we might become, how we might react to various situations. The council fell silent. On the displays around them, data flowed constantly. Trade statistics, population reports, technological development indexes, all of it being monitored by human sensors and analyzed by human computers. What happens if we refuse their protection? Varthek asked. They leave, Keltar said. Admiral Chen was very clear about that. They won't force protection on anyone who doesn't want it. And then, Then we're on our own again. If another threat emerges, if someone else decides to prey on peaceful civilizations, we handle it ourselves. Texani laughed bitterly. With what? Our exploration fleet and our scientific research vessels. We barely have weapons capable of stopping pirates, let alone something like the Void Hunters. So we're trapped, Zexran said. Accept human protection and live under their surveillance. Or refuse it and hope nothing dangerous ever happens again. It's not surveillance, Keltar said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. They call it protective monitoring. The difference being? Intent, supposedly. They're not watching us to find weaknesses to exploit. They're watching us to better understand how to protect us. Televar activated another display, this one showing communication intercepts from other star systems. Look at this. The Altarians accepted human protection last week. The Centauri Federation requested a defensive alliance yesterday. The Crystalline Collective is considering it. Word is spreading, Varthek observed. Every peaceful species in the region has heard about what the humans did to the Void Hunters. They all want that kind of protection for themselves, and the humans are happy to provide it, Keltar added. Admiral Chen told me they're already expanding their fleet deployments to cover the new territories. They're treating this like a natural extension of their responsibilities. Their responsibilities to whom? Texani asked. To galactic civilization, apparently. They seem to genuinely believe they have a duty to protect species that can't protect themselves. The council members exchanged glances. They all understood the implications. The humans weren't conquering through force or economic pressure. They were conquering through protection, making themselves indispensable to every civilization they encountered. There's something else, Keltar said reluctantly. The humans have been sharing technology with some of their protectorates. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, manufacturing techniques. Species under human protection are experiencing unprecedented prosperity. And what do the humans get in return? Varthek asked. Cultural exchange, they call it. They want to learn about other species' art, literature, philosophy. They're particularly interested in how peaceful civilizations develop and maintain stability. They're studying how to create the perfect protectorate, Zexran realized. A species that's prosperous enough to be stable but dependent enough to need protection. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Varthek activated the display, and Admiral Chen's image appeared in the center of the table. Council Leader Varthek, the Admiral said with her characteristic calm professionalism. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Not at all, Admiral. We were just discussing your proposal. I wanted to let you know that we've received a distress call from the Corvin system. They're reporting attacks by what appears to be a previously unknown hostile species. We're preparing to respond. Keltar felt his heart sink. Another threat, another species that would need human protection. Will you require assistance? Varthek asked. Admiral Chen smiled. Thank you for the offer, but we can handle this ourselves. Though if you'd like to send observers, they're welcome to accompany our fleet. It might help you understand our operational procedures. We'll consider it. Also, Admiral Chen continued, I wanted to mention that we've identified several other potential threats in this region. Nothing immediate, but we're monitoring the situations closely. If you accept our protection agreement, we'll be able to address these threats before they become serious problems. The connection ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Did she just? Televar began. Yes, Keltar confirmed. She just told us about new threats that only they can handle, while inviting us to watch them save another civilization. It's brilliant, Texani said with grudging admiration. They don't need to threaten us or coerce us. They just need to keep demonstrating that the galaxy is dangerous and they're the only ones capable of dealing with those dangers. Varthek looked around the table at her fellow council members. All in favor of accepting the human protection agreement? Every hand rose slowly, reluctantly, but inevitably. Motion carried, Varthek said quietly. May the eternal winds forgive us. Later that evening, Keltar stood on his balcony looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, human ships were moving to positions around Zephyrian space. Protective positions, Admiral Chen would say. Strategic positions, Keltar knew. In the distance, he could see the lights of other ships arriving. Merchant vessels from species that had heard about the safety of human-protected space. Scientists wanting to study in the most secure systems in the galaxy. Refugees from regions where threats still existed. They had asked for help against an extinction-level threat. They had received something far more comprehensive and far more permanent. The humans had eliminated the immediate danger and then made themselves indispensable for dealing with every future danger. They had expected salvation. Instead, they had received guardians who would never leave. Keltar's communicator chimed. A message from Admiral Chen, brief and professional as always. Welcome to the Human Protection Sphere, Ambassador. We look forward to a long and peaceful partnership.